Hey, what's going on, everybody? Samuel Akem here, and I'm back with another one. I appreciate you guys for tapping into yet another Akem'S analysis. I got a great video for you guys today. And the first topic we're going to be talking about today is my 5 biggest Big Sky questions for the 2025 season. Got some questions about some of the things going on in the conference, what we could expect this year in the Big Sky Conference. A lot of big guys, a lot of big players leaving the conference. A lot of these schools have to answer some of these questions. And week 1, we are going to be paying close attention to these schools. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to be looking at some of the stat leaders returning to the Big Sky for the 2025 season. I compiled a list of top quarterbacks statistically returning, running backs, receivers, tacklers on defensive side of things, and things like that. So we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the top players returning to the conference, who we could see emerge as potentially a defensive player of the year candidate, offensive player of the year candidate, maybe some Walter Payton Award finalist candidates. We will see. Obviously, that's an early conversation. Colter Nuanez last week had a conversation with Big Sky Commissioner Tom Wistrcill. I've listened to it, and I've peeled some of the things he talked about in that conversation that pertain to the House settlement and the Big Sky going forward. So we're going to discuss a little bit about that. Buyouts are now a thing. Since that House settlement has been approved last week, actually 2 weeks ago on Friday, by Judge Claudia Wilkin. There's a whole host of things. They dropped a Q&A for a lot of people wondering some of the things that are going to be happening in the House settlement. So I'm going to be reading a little bit about that. We got a big excerpt about the agreements, about the transfers, and about some of the incentives that could be in these contracts. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Texas Tech is making a bunch of waves in the college football landscape with the recruiting. That's a little extra topic we'll talk about at the end. South Dakota has announced that they will be opting into the House settlement. We will discuss that. And then today is Sunday. Tomorrow, Monday, FBS Oversight Committee is meeting to discuss Sac State's FBS independent waiver. I'm sure that's not the only thing they're discussing, but maybe that is the only thing they're discussing. It's only an hour and a half long meeting Eastern time, 2 to 3:30 Eastern time. Anyway, we will discuss that as well. So make sure you guys tap into the entire video. We got really good topics today for you guys. I appreciate you guys for tapping into the channel. Please make sure you guys hit that like button. Please make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Please make sure you guys leave me a comment down below, and we will get straight into it. Okay. My 5 biggest Big Sky questions for the 2025 football season. Obviously, the national championship runner-up, Montana State, is losing a ton of talent, in particular Tommy Mellott and Brody Gruby on the defensive side of things. Rylan Ort is another one that comes to mind for me. But those are just a few of the players. Tom McCullough, another player they're losing. But they're losing a ton of talent. Scott Trey Humphrey also left to go to New Mexico. But we will see how they retool up. My question, for Montana State, this is my number 1 question out of my 5 biggest questions for the 2025 season. Will Montana State's offense be anywhere near what it was without Tommy Mellott? And what I mean by that is, without the threat of Tommy, will their offense still hit the same? So as we all know, Tommy was a dual threat quarterback, throw the ball, run the ball. In particular, in running the ball, Tommy Mellott was extremely dangerous. I mean, he added a facet to that offense that you could not replicate anywhere else in the country because there wasn't any quarterbacks like Tommy Mellott in the country. That is why he is the Walter Payton Award winner. He showed that over the course of his career that he could make a difference in the running game, in the passing game. And due to that, teams had to, he was the key to that Montana State offense, because when they're running that zone read scheme as the defensive end, you can't just crash down, because Tommy Mellott always has the ability to pull the ball and hurt you from that standpoint. So that makes defenses have to game plan against that. Now, obviously, Chance Wilson, I believe, can run the ball. I don't think he's a Tommy Mellott. I don't think he's as fast, as explosive, as agile as Tommy Mellott, but he can run the ball well. Justin Lamson, that's a different story. I think he's more of a pocket passer. I had originally said, when I talked about him first transferring to Montana State, that I think maybe he could do some running things. Obviously, he's not going to be Tommy Mellott. From talking to people, I think he's more so of a pocket passer. So if they decide to go with him, that'll be a whole new look offense. But with Chance Wilson, obviously he was the one who backed up Tommy Mellott last year. I think he is very similar to what Tommy Mellott brings to the table. He is an Oklahoma guy and a Owasso guy. He didn't go to Owasso High School. If you guys know anything about Oklahoma, I went to Broken Arrow High School in Oklahoma. Owasso High School was our biggest rival. I saw Chance Wilson was actually from Owasso, but he's from a private school in Owasso. That's just down the street, 20-30 minutes away from Broken Arrow. So, but, he went to a private Christian school, so that doesn't matter. Anyway, Chance Wilson, the Montana State offense what will they look like this year? I'm very curious. I'm very interested to see what they look like. I'm very interested to see what the success rate will be, because obviously I think, they still want to run the ball. They're going to still want to be a downhill running football team. Probably a lot of that zone read, zone running scheme type runs. But what will the option part of it, what will the read option part of it look like? What will that kind of pseudo triple option part aspect of it look like? Because a lot of times they have a zone read, the quarterback can pull it, but a lot of times also they're adding an RPO into that. So a lot of times it's a tight end into the flats, a slant route on the backside, some RPOs, wheel routes up the sidelines with a flat route. So, trying to show a lot of looks, give the quarterback a lot of options. You can hand it, you can pull it, but if you pull it as you're running, if that apex defender uses that nickel or that Sam linebacker fires down on you, toss it out there to that tight end. I mean, there's a lot of options in the offense when they had Tommy Millot. Will it still hit the same? That is my number one question, and I'm going to be keyed into seeing what they look like in 2025. Number two, which QB takes the reins for Montana? Now, obviously, if you were watching the 2024 football season, Montana had a quarterback controversy the entire season. A lot of people felt as though Logan Fife should have been the guy. He was not given the reins ever during the season. He constantly had to split reps with Keali Ayat, but there was a large, at least on the Montana side of things and the Missoula side of things, and not just Montana fans live in Missoula, but people who care about Montana, there were a faction of people that felt as though Ayat being the younger guy, Ayat being the future, you should have stuck with Keali Ayat. You should have just let him ride it out, make his mistakes. If he plays well, he plays well. If he doesn't play well, he doesn't play well. But you should have let him get that experience, let him get those reps and play it out and play through it. But then also there was the other side of people that felt Logan Fife gives this chance the best chance to win. This is a team that went to the national championship the season before. They returned a ton of the talent from that squad, so they should still have an opportunity to be pretty decent in 2024. And the coaches never agreed with either. They kept splitting the reps for the players. If one player would mess up, the other player would get taken out. We are returning this year. There are two quarterbacks that really come to mind in terms of fighting for the starting position at Montana. I see that as Keali Ayat and Jensen, the quarterback who was brought in from USC, the transfer quarterback. I believe he's brought in from USC. Either way, two quarterbacks, one a veteran, one more young. I think Ayat is still a redshirt sophomore. 2023, he was a redshirt freshman. 2023, he was a true freshman who redshirted. In 2024, he was a redshirt freshman. In 2025, he is going to be a redshirt sophomore. He's got a couple of years under his belt. He's seen success. He's seen some of the struggles also. But I believe that Ayat should be the guy to take the reins. I didn't see much from Jensen during the spring game. It wasn't that anything he did super, stood out to me. Obviously, it was a small sample size. I do believe we are in a situation where both quarterbacks are going to play early for Montana, because I think, both guys still need some game reps to be able to show what they can do. Obviously, training camp is going to be a huge thing for these quarterbacks. That's a big opportunity for both quarterbacks to show what they can do, and I think that's going to be where a lot of the hearts in the Montana administration and in the Montana football program are going to be won. But I think it's going to take at least a couple of those two non-conference games to show who really deserves the opportunity. But one thing I hope they don't do, and one thing they cannot do, is Montana cannot do a two quarterback system. When Montana has seen success the most recently has been when they went with one quarterback. That was Clifton McDowell. He had a running component to his game that really, I think, helped influence that offense and better them down the road. I think Keali Ayat brings that aspect. He had 4 rushing touchdowns against Western Carolina last year when he ended up getting a concussion at the end of the game. I think Ayat bringing that aspect, but also being able to throw the ball, I think he is the best guy for the job, just based on what I've seen in the past and based on what I've seen be successful in this Montana offense. I think you need Keali Ayat. Obviously, the games are going to show who deserves that position, but this is a huge question for anybody paying attention to the Big Sky, anybody paying attention to Montana football. Which QB takes the reins for Montana? We will have to wait and see for the 2025 season. I think it should be Ayat, but obviously there's still a bunch of time until we get to see that. Number 3, will a Big Sky school get over the hump this year? Now, obviously, I've talked about this a ton. This has been a discussion going on. Big Sky schools have not been shy of making it to the national championship. Look as far as this season, Montana State made it. Look at last season, Montana made it. If you look at 2021, Montana State made it again. If you look at 2018, Eastern Washington made it. If you look back at 2010, Eastern Washington won it. So over the last few years, it's not that, the Big Sky has not been able to get there, because they've had a ton of semifinalists, they've had a ton of quarterfinalists, they've had a few national championship appearances, and they just have not been able to get over the hump. The question is, will a Big Sky school get over the hump this year? Obviously, I think the first schools that come to mind are Montana State, Montana, Idaho could potentially sneak in there. Sac State, if they don't get their FBS waiver approved, can they sneak in there and maybe get a national championship? They have a really, really strong roster this year. Now, they have opted into the house settlement, so with transfers, their guys transferring out. That also is a question for me that we'll get to later that just came to my head. There's buyouts. Say a school that's opted in this year, a school that's opted in has this guy that tries to transfer out. What does that look like for if he tries to transfer to a school that is not opted into the house settlement? Now, obviously, I think most of the FBS schools are opted in. I don't think there was an option given for schools. That's a different discussion for a different day. Will a Big Sky school get over the hump this year? There's a few schools that come to mind: Idaho, Montana, Montana State, Sac State if they don't get their FBS waiver approved. Maybe a UC Davis. They're losing Len Larson, a really big piece. They're losing their quarterback Miles Hastings as well. So I think they're going to have a down year this year just based on the talent that they're losing. I think those are some really hard pieces to replace. Obviously, they have a good head coach. They have a good, they've been one of the schools that have lost the least in the transfer portal. I reported a couple weeks ago. Well, actually, it was on social media reported a couple of weeks ago. I talked about it on my channel that the only transfers they've lost at UC Davis are grad transfers. They don't really get a lot of guys leaving their system just in terms of transferring out. And I don't even think we saw a ton this offseason either. I want to know what the secret sauce is to that. But I don't know. That's a big question mark for the Big Sky. Obviously, it's the best conference in FCS football. Tom Wistrcill has voiced that he believes it's the best conference in FCS football as well. And I think if you just look at talent top to bottom, it seems to be the best conference in FCS football. The MVFC, I almost called it the SEC. The MVFC is a little top heavy. So obviously, they have some top teams, and North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Southern Illinois, South Dakota, a few of the schools that come to mind, maybe in Illinois State, they've made the playoffs a few times. But after you get past those top 4 to 5, it really falls off. And honestly, looking at the Big Sky, it feels kind of the same. Montana, Montana State, Idaho, NAU can be in there, UC Davis can be in there. But then after that, although, you can put Sac State maybe up there, they're middle of the pack. They didn't have a great year last year. Eastern Washington didn't have a great year last year. But I think from a talent perspective, I don't know. They really seem kind of even to me, but I would put the Big Sky above. I am a little biased, but I would put the Big Sky above the Missouri Valley. But when will a Big Sky school get over the hump this year? That's a big question for me, and we will have to wait for the 2025 season to find out. Number 4, how will Idaho bounce back after the departure of Jason Eck? So obviously, Idaho, I would say, is a blue blood in the Big Sky Conference. They're one of the staples in the Big Sky Conference. They've been in the playoffs the last couple of years with Jason Eck at the helm. Jason Eck now left to go to New Mexico. They bring in Coach, I want to say Tracy Ford, but I don't think it's Tracy Ford. Coach Ford from Oregon State. I think Tracy Ford is his brother. I'm blanking on his first name, but Coach Ford from Oregon State, the former running backs coach at Oregon State, comes into Idaho. But obviously he's lost a bit of talent. Deshaun Buchanan, their young running back who kind of came on late in the season, is gone. They lost their quarterback, Jack Lane. They still returned Jack Wagner. I believe they brought in Josh Wood from Fresno State as a transfer. We'll see what he is able to do. Obviously, he wasn't able to get his legs at the FBS level, but we'll see what he can do at the FCS level. We'll see if he can win that job over Jack Wagner. Jack Wagner, I think, kind of played around with the job last year. He had some highlights, but he also had some lowlights, and there were some things that weren't pretty about his game last year. Obviously, he was a young guy, so you don't expect him to be 100% perfect last year. But then also, you look at Idaho, they lost their 2 starting receivers. Mark Hamper left to go to Wisconsin. He transferred during the spring transfer window out of Wisconsin. So I believe he's now at Cal. I think he just committed to Cal either a week or 2 ago. And then you got Jordan Dwyer, who I believe went to TCU. But 2 of their really good running backs left. I believe they lost a DB to maybe Andrew Marshall maybe was the defensive back that they lost as well. So, Idaho lost a ton of talent. They're bringing in a new head coach from an FBS school. We will see what they're able to do. But how will Idaho bounce back after the departure of Jason Eck? Because in that first year, 2022, Jason Eck really put Idaho back on the map. 2023, they carried that over to make it to a quarterfinal date where they lost to Albany. And then last year, they lost in the quarterfinals to Montana State. But they made it to the quarterfinals. They're making playoff runs. They're winning games. Now, obviously, it seems like Jason Eck had kind of hit a cap at that quarterfinal date. They hadn't really been able to get to the semis, hadn't really been able to get over that hump, but they were a school that was playing well. It wasn't a shoe-in. Anytime you played this school, you had the game plan for them. They had good talent. He was able to recruit really well. So how will Idaho bounce back from that? That's a big question mark for me. I am somebody who believes Idaho will kind of end up being, a 7-5, 8-4 team. They'll probably be a playoff team, but they won't be super good. I don't think they'll be the best team in the Big Sky Conference. I think they'll be maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th best in the Big Sky Conference. And obviously, to me, it depends on talent. It depends on, Coach Ford's message. How is he able to gel that team together? How do they mesh together? But that's a big question mark for me going into 2025. How will Idaho retool up? How will they bounce back after the departure of what I would say is a really stellar head coach in the Big Sky Conference? We will see about that. But fifth and final question for me for the 2025 season is about UC Davis. They made it to the quarterfinals last year. They lost to South Dakota in the quarterfinals. How does UC Davis bounce back after losing all-world running back Land Larison? Now, obviously, Land Larison was UC Davis' leading quarterback. Wouldn't that be crazy if he was the leading passer, leading rusher, and leading receiver? We'll never see that. He was their leading rusher. He was their leading receiver as well. He had about 800 receiving yards. I think he had about, don't make me lie, 1,500 rushing yards. I think he was around 2,500 all-purpose yards, so maybe he had a little bit more rushing yards. I can't exactly remember. Maybe 1,400, 1,500 rushing yards. Maybe I'm a little high on that. But how does UC Davis bounce back after losing him? I haven't seen a running back like Lance Larison in a minute in the Big Sky Conference. He's obviously one of one, being able to receive at a high level out of the backfield, but also being able to run the ball at a high level out of the backfield as well. That is not an easy piece to replace. Obviously, he was a big reason as to why they got as deep as they got into the playoffs, a big reason why they were the runner-up in the Big Sky Conference, a big reason why they had a chance to win that Big Sky title, but fell short in their loss to Montana State. He's with the Patriots now. Making waves. I think that's a perfect spot for him under that Josh McDaniels system. I'm interested to see how UC Davis bounces back. Obviously, they're a good squad. Obviously, they're a squad, like I just talked about a little bit earlier in this discussion. They don't lose a ton of talent through transfer. That helps them every year. As you know, in this new FCS landscape, the transfer portal is a big what if. You can never, as a coach, you don't know who's going to leave after the season. You don't know how to game plan for that because kids aren't telling you at week 5, hey coach, I'm probably going to transfer out. So then you can start as a coach recruiting, start to look at some pieces that you can maybe grab, so that is tough to game plan for, but UC Davis, I think, is the best school to be able to bounce back from that because they don't lose a ton from transfer. But my question is, with them not losing a ton to transfer, how much do they bring in for transfer? Because obviously, I don't know if you can just do it based on high school recruitment in college sports anymore. I think you have to use the transfer portal. Clemson, Coach Dabo Swinney is somebody who hasn't dipped into this, and they haven't really seen the success. Obviously, they've been competitive. They've been competitive in the ACC, but they haven't necessarily seen that national championship semifinals bump yet that they had seen in previous years prior to really the transfer portal and NIL becoming so big. So UC Davis, I feel like, is a school similar to that. I don't see a ton of transfers going to UC Davis, but you don't see a ton of guys leaving for transfer as well. So we'll see how UC Davis is able to bounce back. Those are my 5 biggest questions. Number 1, will Montana State's offense be anywhere, all caps, near what it was without Tommy Mellott? Which QB takes the reins from Montana? Number 2. Number 3, will a Big Sky school get over the hump this year? Number 4, how will Idaho bounce back after the departure of Jason Eck? And number 5, how does UC Davis bounce back after losing all-world running back Land Larison? You guys let me know if you guys think you have the answer to any of these questions down below, and we will move on. Okay, next I want to look at some of the stat leaders returning to the Big Sky Conference in the 2025 season. As we talk about always throughout this most recent offseason, schools are losing talent every day. all day during the offseason. And as soon as that last game ends, there are players within a FCS school's roster who are just waiting to get their transfer papers and get out of there and get to another school. And it happens for a host of reasons. Me and the coach don't agree. This scheme doesn't necessarily fit me. The coach I came to be recruited by is no longer here, or my coach is leaving at the end of this season to go somewhere else. We saw that with Idaho this past offseason. We saw it with South Dakota State this past offseason. Coaches leave, players need to enter the portal. There's a host of reasons why players leave in the transfer portal, but we are still covering the Big Sky Conference, and there is still a host of talent in the Big Sky Conference that, we are going to be looking at. So, passing leaders returning to the Big Sky Conference in 2025. At number 1, we have Kobe Tracy, quarterback at Idaho State. He threw for 3,000 yards last year, 60% completion percentage, 24-10 TD to interception ratio, and he averaged 256 yards per game. Obviously, Idaho State was not the best squad. Kobe Tracy, I believe, is a good quarterback, but he also plays in a system where he's throwing the ball a ton. And there are question marks if Kobe Tracy will be the starter in 2025. They have another quarterback who redshirted last year in Jordan Cook. He showed great promise in 2023. He had some highs. He also had some lows. But, I think he is a player who could make waves at Idaho State in 2025. We will see how all that works out, because obviously Kobe Tracy did show that he can do some things last year. 24-10 TD to interception ratio isn't terrible. 60% completion percentage is not terrible. 3,000 passing yards. I don't know if there was a ton of quarterbacks that did that. I think Miles Hastings maybe did that. I don't even think Tommy Mellott did that, but we know he's an anomaly at the quarterback position. Number 2, Ty Pennington, quarterback at NAU. 2,200 passing yards, almost 2,300 passing yards, 65% completion percentage. He has the highest completion percentage of the returning quarterbacks on my list, at least. There may be some quarterbacks who got less snaps, who threw the ball less, who maybe have a higher completion percentage. 13-2 TD to interception ratio. I really, really love that. Objectively speaking, Kobe Tracy has the best statistics out of the Big Sky Conference quarterbacks returning. Ty Pennington is the best quarterback returning into the Big Sky this year. I don't know if he got all conference honors. He may have been an honorable mention, but really good completion percentage, really good TD to interception percentage, 190 passing yards per game. They tried to run the ball as well last year. They didn't lean 100% on their passing game. They were a school that wanted to establish their game on the ground. They were also a school that had a really, really good defense, so that was something that they leaned on as well. And you can see Ty Pennington played to that. 13 TDs, 2 interceptions. When you're a quarterback who knows that you have a good defense, you want to take care of the ball. Obviously, you want to be successful. Obviously, you want to move the ball down the field. But another aspect of that is just don't hurt us. Just don't put us in a disadvantageous situation. Just don't put us at a disadvantage. I just spit all over my screen. Just don't put us at a disadvantage. Keep us ahead in the chains. If you have to, just punt the ball away, pin the team down inside their own 20. We'll do the rest of the work. We'll get you the ball back. 2 interceptions on the year. Really good for Ty Pennington. I'm excited to see what he does in 2025. I think he could be an early pick for Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year. Obviously, there's not a lot of great talent outside of the running back position and maybe some of the receivers returning to the Big Sky Conference. I think Ty Pennington has to be early Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year pick just based on the talent returning. And he would obviously be my pick. I will go through all of my Big Sky award picks, preseason picks, through as we get closer to the season, probably after the Big Sky Media Day, which is happening in a few weeks. But we'll get into that later on in the year. Jack Wagner from Idaho, 1,300 passing yards, almost 1,400 passing yards, 54 completion percentage, 12-5 TD to interception ratio, and 126 passing yards per game. Jack Wagner was somebody who I think kind of, was up and was down last year. He was always around 50% completion percentage. But the thing about Jack Wagner that I don't want to look past is the fact that a lot of the games that Jack Wagner started, Idaho won. You can talk about how he played in the games. You can talk about how he was. And I'm somebody who has been very vocal about I don't necessarily think, I think if they bring somebody in at Idaho, they could very well challenge Jack Wagner for that job. And I think Joshua Wood is going to challenge Jack Wagner for that job. And I would honestly probably predict Josh Wood starts the season and Jack Wagner being the backup. But with that being said, that's not to say that they did not win with Jack Wagner at the helm. It didn't always look pretty, but they won. I'll remind you, Jack Wagner was the starting quarterback for their game against Wyoming that they won. So we can't just summarily dismiss Jack Wagner as becoming the starter at Idaho. He did do some really good things last year, but also he did do some bad things as well. That's why they tried Nick Josefek. That's why when Jack Lane came back, he was the starter, because Jack Wagner never, he never took the reins. He never stole the job. He maintained it. He did what he needed to do. Idaho Idaho was still in the playoffs. They were still kept very, very competitive. They had a really good defense last year. But, there's some consideration there. But Jack Wagner was a decent quarterback. He's statistically the third leading quarterback returning to the Big Sky this year. And we'll see what he's able to do. At number 4, we have Bo Kelly at Cal Poly. Now, I think Cal Poly was a school that did 2 quarterbacks, so there could be another quarterback that, may have got better stats, didn't have as good stats. Bo Kelly was the guy that was in the Big Sky database as the leading passer from Cal Poly last year. He had 1,100 passing yards, 65% completion percentage, 6 TDs, 6 interceptions, 143 yards per game. Bo Kelly, decent quarterback. A decent season last year, a decent completion percentage at 65%. I think you kind of want your quarterbacks at 67, 68, maybe close to 70%. 7 out of your 10 passes are completed every time. That's good completion percentage. Bo Kelly, without knowing too much of what's going on at Cal Poly, I can't say that Bo Kelly is going to be their starter. I haven't seen a ton of transfer news out of Cal Poly. I don't know how many people are looking to transfer to Cal Poly, but I also don't know how many people are looking to transfer out of Cal Poly. I think they had a few transfers out of Cal Poly, but we will see what he's able to do. And at number 5, making the list is Keali'i Ayat with 1,100 passing yards, a 59.3% completion percentage, a 7 TD to 6 interception ratio, and a 101.9 yards, 102 passing yards per game. I've done a ton of talk about Keali'i Ayat. I don't have to belabor the point. He needs to be better in his completion percentage. He needs to be better with his decision making. The 7 TDs to 6 interception ratio doesn't look great. Obviously, he didn't start every game. Obviously, he didn't play a ton. When he made mistakes, he was taken out of the game. That's something that I disagreed with last year. But he has another opportunity to earn that spot in training camp. He's had a whole offseason to grind, to put his to put his head down and make something happen. I'm hoping he's able to do that this year. Biasly, I do want Keali'i Ayat to be the starter. He is a legacy player at Montana. His dad was a great player at Montana. I would like to see him start. I would like to see him do well. I remember in 2023, I did tweet out, I thought he was the guy. I thought he showed enough to be able to show that he has the ability to play. Given a bigger sample size, there were some things that he needs to work on. He needs to work on his decision making. He needs to be able to deliver the ball down the field. We've seen him do some good things. He delivered the ball with confidence to Xavier during the Missouri State game to start the season. In that blackout game, he made a really good throw into the red zone to Xavier Harris. It was a throw it was an accurate throw on time, in stride, really big play in the game. That was a close game. Missouri State was a better team than I think a lot of people gave them credit for last year. And Keali'i Ayat played well. So I would love to see what he is able to do this year. I would love to see if he could get the starting position. Obviously, that's going to be earned during training camp. I'm not going to do too much talking. That completion percentage is low at 59%. That has to be better. And you have to show that during spring ball. You have to show that during training camp. There were reports that he was dealing with a hamstring injury during spring ball. So hopefully he's able to get healthy from that this offseason and perform. He did, although he was dealing with a hamstring issue, he did play during the spring game. He didn't get a ton of snaps. None of the quarterbacks really got a ton of snaps. A lot of the younger quarterbacks got a lot of the snaps, like Luke Flowers. But we will see what he's able to do. Keali'i Ayat, he's 5th on this list. We'll see what he's able to do. Rushing leaders, Adam Jones at 1,172 rushing yards last year on 184 carries. 14 rushing touchdowns, 78.1 rushing yards per game. Obviously, Adam Jones was not the feature back last year. I think he was thrusted into that role with the injury to Julius Davis and the injury to Scottre Humphrey. But he was for the most part, he was the backup running back to Scottre Humphrey last year. Still was able to get over 1,100 yards. Still was the Jerry Rice Award finalist. I'm excited to see what he's able to do this year. I think he could be a running back that gets over 1,500 yards. He should be an early look. He should be a preseason favorite or a preseason. If there was a list of like the top 5 to win Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year, Adam Jones would be up there. At number 2, we got Eli Gilman, 167 carries, 1,100 yards, 15 TDs, rushing TDs at 78.9 yards per game. Adam Jones and Eli Gilman had very similar seasons last year. I'm excited to see both of them. It's very exciting in the Big Sky Conference right now because you lose Scottre Humphrey, because you lose Deshaun Buchanan, because you lose the Weber State running back Damon Bankston. I mean, the Big Sky Conference right now is a running back conference. Montana is led by their running back Eli Gilman. Montana State was led by their double-headed monster in Adam Jones and Scottre Humphrey. Weber State was led by two of their running backs. They have one returning, Davion Godley, with 630 rushing yards. He's on this list right now, but they also had Damon Bankston last year, two running backs. Idaho State had a host of running backs. Elisha Cummings, Deshaun Buchanan are a few that I think of. NAU even had a really good running back. Portland State had some good running backs. I mean, Nate Thomas is another running back at Idaho that I think of as well. But the Big Sky Conference really seems like a running back conference right now, and you see that littered all over the conference. Obviously, a good football team is going to have a good running back, but I think it was the running backs that shined more than the wide receivers in the Big Sky Conference last year. Outside of Efton Chisholm, I don't think there was any really receivers that blew you away. I mean, you look at the national championship runner-up Montana State. I think their leading receiver last year was Taco Dalla with almost 600 receiving yards. They didn't really have a stellar receiver. You look at Montana. I think a lot of the Montana receivers like Keelan White, Junior Bergen, they were probably around 600, 500 receiving yards, around there. You look at who else we got on here? You look at Weber State, NAU. None of them really had stellar receivers. You look at UC Davis. Lan Larison was their leading receiver. The leading receiver in the conference, Efton Chisholm with 1,300 receiving yards. They didn't even make the playoffs. They weren't even a good team. So one could say that the reason I don't agree with this because I know how good Efton Chisholm is, but some could say the reason Efton Chisholm had all those receiving yards was because they lost all those games. We know that's not the truth. We know what Efton Chisholm brings to the table, but the point I'm making is the Big Sky Conference is a running back league. It has been that, I think, since 2023. 2024 was another big year for the running backs, and 2025 I think is going to be another year for that. At number 3, we got Seth Cromwell, 125 carries, 681 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns, 56.8 yards per game. We got DeLon Thompson at Portland State at number 4, 139 carries, 678 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, 61.6 rushing yards per game. At number 5, we got Davion Godley, hopefully going to be that number 1 running back at Weber State this year with the exit of Damon Bankston to New Mexico, which is interesting. Deshaun Buchanan, Davion Godley, Scottre Humphrey all went to New Mexico. Either Jason Eck is hoping to play a bunch of running backs, which is something that he's shown he did at Idaho, so I wouldn't be surprised if he did that at New Mexico, or he's hoping somebody comes in there and wins the job. We will see. I think probably the best out of those 3, if I had to guess, Damon Bankston, Deshaun Buchanan, and Scottre Humphrey. I would honestly say Damon Bankston because what he does out of the backfield and what he does as a running back, what he does as a receiver, I think he's the most well-rounded running back out of that group. Scottre Humphrey is a really good running back. I think he was helped a lot by that offensive line in that offense at Montana State. I don't think he has as much shiftiness as Damon Bankston or a Deshaun Buchanan. So we'll see. Either way, that's not the discussion right now. Davion Godley, 101 carries, 630 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns. I put 4 YDs on there. 4 TDs on there, 52.5 yards per game. Davion Godley, I think, could be a really good player in the Big Sky Conference this year. We'll see what Weber State's able to do. They lost Richie Munoz, so we'll see. Nate Thomas at Idaho, 103 carries, 543 yards, 5 touchdowns, 54.3 yards per game. Another Idaho running back making this list. That's 6 players on this list. I did put 6 on there because I had forgot somebody, added somebody in the middle, and then, A lot of times when you're making these lists, you're trying to see who's transferred, so you got to search social media to see if they've, posted their transfer. Because a lot of times the school websites don't have any information about guys leaving on there. So you got to do some in-depth research to figure out who is staying, who is leaving. At the receiving position, Samuel Batu Jr. at UC Davis, 44 receptions, 779 yards, 7 TDs, 17.7 yards per reception at 55.6 yards per game. He's the top statistical receiver returning. At number 2, you got Taco Dalla, 38 receptions, 97 yards, 11 TDs, 15.7 yards per reception on 37.3 yards per game. That was obviously low. They played 15 games last year, so obviously that average is going to be spread out among all those 15 games. At number 3, you have, it might have been 16 games. At number 3, you have Michael Bristow out of Cal Poly, 25 receptions, 538 yards, 21.5 yards a reception, 48.9 yards per game. This is what this tells me when I see a stat like that, 21 yards per reception. This guy is a big play guy. He is coming to the Big Sky Media Day in Spokane this year. That tells me that Cal Poly thinks highly of this guy. I think he is going to be a senior this year. I texted somebody I know and said, hey, This is a name you need to be looking out for in the 2025 season. Michael Briscoe out of Cal Poly. I think he's a big play guy. I think he's somebody who could blow up the Big Sky Conference this year. We will see. Obviously, that takes a quarterback. Obviously, that takes an offensive line. Obviously, it takes all the pieces. But obviously, he had some success last year. We will see what he's able to do in 2025. Ian Duarte out of Idaho State, 47 receptions, 500 yards, 3 TDs, 10.7 yards of reception at 45.8 yards per game. Number 5, Kobe Katzis at NAU, 35 receptions, 498 yards, 2 TDs, 14.2 yards of reception at 45.3 yards per game. Those are the 5 receivers, the top receivers returning in the Big Sky Conference. Now we go to defense. We only got 2 more sections here. Tackles. There are brothers on here, 2 UC Davis guys on here, which leads me to believe that the UC Davis defense could be one of the better in the Big Sky Conference this year. We will see. You got Rex Connors at UC Davis, 115 total tackles, 74 solo tackles, 10.5 tackles per game. He is the top tackler in the Big Sky Conference returning for 2025 out of total tackles. Rex Connors is the safety. Porter Connors is the linebacker. They are both returning to the Big Sky Conference in 2025. Peyton Wing was at Portland State in 2025. He is now in 2024. He is now at Montana in 2025. That is a huge addition for Montana. I think something that was lacking for Montana in the 2024 season was cohesive, strong linebacker play. You need linebackers who know how to fill gaps, who know how to run the ball, who give effort. I think Peyton Wing is going to bring a really, really big addition to this Montana defense. He had 93 total tackles in 2024, 52 solo, 8.5 tackles per game. He's a big addition for Montana. At number 3, you have Nathan Reynolds out of Idaho State, 92 total tackles, 44 solo, 7.7 tackles per game. Anybody on this list for tackles? Golly, I'm spitting a bunch. Anybody on this list for tackles should be in consideration for Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. I think in the tackles and the sacks category, all these guys I think are under consideration. I would put Rex Connors at the top of the list for consideration for Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. I would put Peyton Wing up there. I would put Porter Connors up there. And on my sacks list, I would put Kenneth Iden up there. I don't know if I would put anybody else from the sacks list on there, but I would put Kenneth Iden on there for consideration for Defensive Player of the Year. And we'll get into the discussion about him in a second. Nathan Reynolds at Idaho State at number 3. Number 4, Porter Connors at UC Davis as well. 86 total tackles, 42 solos, 6.6 tackles per game. Obviously, Rex Connors and Porter Connors are brothers. No surprise to see them both on there. And number 5 was a surprise for me. He's a smaller player. He's a safety at UNC Northern Colorado. 83 total tackles, 45 solos, 6.9 tackles per game for Cam Chapa out of Northern Colorado. Obviously, Northern Colorado is the worst team in the Big Sky Conference. I don't say that to poo-poo on Northern Colorado. It is just a fact. Cam Chapa is a bright spot at that Northern Colorado squad. I'm excited to see what he's able to do in 2025. So I'm surprised to see Cam Chapa didn't transfer. He is a shorter player. I think he's measured at 5'10", 5'11". He's a shorter safety. He plays free safety, plays over the top, comes down and makes plays. He was tied for the league lead in interceptions last year with 4, tied with Montana's Jace Klusiewicz. I was surprised to see he didn't transfer. Maybe he didn't transfer because he sees some things at Northern Colorado. Maybe he didn't transfer because maybe he didn't think people would want a shorter safety, a smaller safety. I don't know. I think he's maybe somebody who could have maybe got a transfer to maybe a G5 school, maybe another FCS school, maybe another Big Sky school like Peyton Wing. Maybe he could have been a Grizz at Montana. Maybe he could have been a Montana State player. Who knows? But Cam Chapa, 5th on our list with 83 total tackles, 45 solo. You guys let me know what you think about that. Sacks. At number 1 on the returning sack leaders in the Big Sky Conference, you got Kenneth Iden IV at Montana State. 9 total sacks, 8 solo. I believe he was the leading sack getter. Although they had Brody Grebe at Montana State last year, teams know about him. They're keying into him. He wasn't super productive from a sack standpoint. He was super productive with an impact standpoint, with the impact that he's making on the game. But with his production, he wasn't super productive. Kenneth Iden Jr., is returning to Montana State in 2025, and I think he is going to have a huge year. Now, obviously, teams are going to know about him now because he was on a really good team last year, because he was very productive last year. He's somebody I think you need to keep an eye on for 2025. He's going to make waves this year. At number 2, you got Sam Goligoski at UC Davis. 5 total sacks last year. All of them were solo sacks. Another piece returning to UC Davis. On that UC Davis defense, Rex Connors, Porter Connors, Sam Goligoski. I mean, you just see the pieces that UC Davis is returning outside of the quarterback and running back position. From the defensive side of things, UC Davis looks to be retooling up for a really good 2025 season. At number 3, you got Josh Cacciola at Sac State. 4 total sacks, 4 of those solo. Sac State, we will see what they're able. I put them on here, but we don't know if Sac State's going to be FBS. I think it's looking that they're going to be FBS. Their waiver is set to be approved tomorrow. I'm recording this Sunday. Tomorrow is Monday. That's when they're meeting about it. But even tomorrow, they're just meeting about it tomorrow. There will be further discussions after tomorrow where it has to go through another process of getting approved. But we'll see. But Josh Cacciola is top returner so far. Ezra Ekuban at UNC, 3 total sacks, 3 of them solo. He's the 4th leading sack getter in the Big Sky Conference, returning for the 2025 season. Interested to see what he's able to do. And last but certainly not least, Ethan Rodriguez at Cal Poly. 3 total sacks, 3 of them solo. He's the 5th leading sack getter, returning to the Big Sky Conference. I don't know how to predict a lot of these guys. I think Sam Goligoski could have a really good year. He was on a pretty good team last year in UC Davis. And then, obviously, Kenneth Iden. I've been looking at him a lot this offseason. I looked at doing a breakdown on him this past offseason, but, finding some of those plays, I'll have to look at the All-22 film. I would love to do a Kenneth Iden breakdown, but he is one of the top players returning to the Big Sky Conference. He should be an early pick for Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year favorite. Him, Rex Connors, Porter Connors, Peyton Wing, I think are some of the guys that stand out to me as early picks for Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. You guys let me know what you guys think about some of the stat leaders returning to the Big Sky Conference in 2025, and I will move on. Okay, Colton Nuanez of Skyline Sports and ESPN Radio here in Missoula sat down with Tom Wistrcill, the Big Sky Conference commissioner, a few weeks ago. I think it was last week, actually, that he sat down with him. They had a really good discussion. They're discussing all the changes going on in college football. I've peeled some quotes from Tom Wistrcill out of this interview. You guys can go listen to the full interview on ESPN. You can find it on the ESPN Twitter account, the ESPN Missoula Twitter account. You guys can find it on there. And you guys can go listen to the full interview yourself. Just some interesting things that I heard Tom Wistrcill say during this interview. First things first, Coulter asked, how are you feeling about the changes going on in the Big Sky Conference? How are you feeling about the changes going on in college football? Where are you at? He said the future is scary. As someone that wants to preserve this incredible thing that we all experience when we go to college athletic events, thinking about the future, it seems as though there's a lot going on. There's a lot of changes happening. This conversation, I will say, did happen prior to the House settlement being approved. So some of the things that he was talking about were anticipation of the House settlement being approved. Judge Claudia Wilkin had not levied her decision on it yet. She ended up giving her decision later on in that week that discussion was had. But all we talk about right now is about money. How much money are we giving to the coaches? How much money are we paying to the players? The TV ratings. I mean, everything in college football is about money. It seems that money has taken over in college sports. It seems that that's all people care about. There still is an education aspect of college athletics. There still is a tradition aspect of college athletics. There is still, going from a kid to becoming a grown-up in college sports that matters. But in Tom Wistrcill's opinion, it seems as though the money is the only thing that matters. That's all that's talked about, the NIL, the revenue sharing, the TV deals of what these conferences are going to get from their TV deals. It's all that people talk about. It's all that matters. And with the P4s, they make the most money. They believe they should be having all the decision-making power and everything. It's kind of crazy what's going on. When it's all about money, you start to lose focus of what it was all about, which was the experience, the education, the passion, the opportunity for a student athlete to get a degree and play the sport they love. I mean, that is exactly what he means. College was never just about money. College became big. People started making more money. These institutions started making more money. These schools started making more money off the back of these players, which I think you had to add the players into it. It never was meant to be about money, but in a world where athletics are so successful, athletics are wanted so much, people want this sport so bad, football in particular and basketball in particular, people want to watch and be a part of it so bad, the money was eventually going to be a topic of discussion. But it does suck that it takes all of the headlines. Coulter asked him a question about how how do you deal with some of the changes going on in college football? How do you deal with the House settlement? Tom Wistrcill said, to me, it's about balance of how do we help our teams navigate this mess and not losing what we created. for what we were created for. What is the biggest fear? Coulter asked him, what is the biggest fear of the Big Sky Conference right now? Tom Wistrcill said, from a governance standpoint with the NCAA, the P4 has said, we want all the decision-making power about everything. And the other 28 conferences are a bit concerned about that, as you should be. I mean, there's these P4 conferences, particularly the SEC and Big Ten, want all the decision-making power. They want all the CFP spots. I mean, they want everything. The SEC and Big Ten, Greg Sankey, and I'm blanking on the Big Ten commissioner's name, they want all the power. They want to be able to make all the decisions for everybody else, which is not fair. That's not a system that anybody would want to be a part of. These guys are going to say jump. We're going to say how high. Absolutely not. Our school's budgets are in the 20 millions and their school's budgets are in the 200 millions. So that is what that is what Tom Wistrcill was pointing out about, although it's not right that they should have all the decision-making power, they should have a large majority of the power. Now, all of the decision-making power, absolutely not. But they should have a majority of the voting power because they do make a lot of money. But in order to completely cut out all of the other conferences, all of the other institutions, that's not how it's going to go, and people aren't going to stand for that. But that is what the P4s want. These are some of the biggest fears for Tom Wistrcill in the Big Sky Conference right now. How do we find a governance structure that rewards them for things that they want while still having some checks and balances of the system? So he's still speaking to the big P4s. How do we find a governance structure? Because that's the College Sports Commission is a new governance structure. How do we find a governance structure that rewards the P4s who make a lot of the money and who want to make a lot of the decisions in the conference? How do we reward them for the things that they want while still having checks and balances in the system? So basically, yes, sure, give them 60% of the voting power, maybe 55% of the voting power. But how do we reward them and give them that which they're looking for while also having a checks and balances? So sure, they can have a lot of the voting power, but there needs to be checks and balances in the system. There needs to be people making sure that, they're not going past their bounds. So there needs to be basically like, yes, the P4s are going to be the top, but we need Congress to check the P4s. We need somebody who is a middleman who doesn't answer to them at the top that can still hold them accountable at the top. There needs to be a system in place that doesn't give the P4s all the decision making. We don't know what that is right now. We need to work with our schools to make sure they know the pros and cons of opting into the House settlement. So another thing with some of his biggest fears is making sure that all his schools know what they're getting with opting in and not opting into the House settlement. There's roster considerations. There's rev share considerations. Rev share is not something that you have to do, but in order to rev share, you have to know where that revenue is coming from. So those are considerations that need to be made. How are you going to shift around your roster, because there is a roster cap with the Big Sky. And so say a school opts into the House settlement, you can still only offer 63 scholarships. With the new House settlement, you have a roster limit, so 105. With that being said, conferences have been setting a scholarship limit. So 63 was the number prior to. 63 is going to still be the number after the House settlement in the Big Sky Conference. If the SEC Big Four P4s were to separate, they then take on all legal responsibility. And I think they like spreading it out across 368 institutions rather than taking it on themselves. They also like their nonprofit status. So this was geared towards a question in asking about, the SEC Big Four, the P4s having all the decision-making power, and why they don't just separate from the NCAA, from the FBS, why don't they just separate and go out on their own? Well, with that comes all the legal responsibility. Right now, currently, the NCAA takes on all the legal responsibility, and going forward, I think the College Sports Commission is going to take on all the legal responsibility. If they were to split and make their own thing, they take on all the legal responsibility. They become a for-profit. They no longer have nonprofit status, so the tax write-offs that you get with the nonprofit status are gone. The legal responsibility of people suing you if they disagree with things that you're implementing or things that's going on, you take on that responsibility as well, which is more money leaving the conference, not coming into the conference, because you're paying for lawyers, you're paying for court cases, all that good stuff. So that's another consideration that's to be had. Tom, on being the voice of opposition in the House settlement discussion. We are the top FCS conference in the country and known as that across the country. So basically, he's saying, being the top dogs in the FCS, I see it as my responsibility to speak out against things when I see them going on, because some of these smaller schools, some of these smaller conferences may not feel they have the leg to stand on to speak up and speak out. Being in the Big Sky, being one of the top conferences in FCS football, we need to speak up and say when we feel like we're being had. And this stems from Tom Wistrcill saying that, the House settlement basically, The house settlement basically is unfair. The back pay damages that some of these smaller FCS conferences are having to pay back back in this settlement is not right. You know, we wouldn't have been even paying a majority of the money to our players in this house settlement. Now we're being tasked with paying back a large portion of the back damages year over year. He doesn't believe that's correct, and it should be done that way. When it comes to the Big Sky Conference, what kind of discussions are being had with the house settlement? You'll find out about the house settlement at the same time I do on a ticker on Twitter. That is just absolutely crazy. The fact that these conferences and these conference commissioners aren't even finding out about the house settlement before, regular people like myself, reporters and journalists like Colter Nuanez are. It's crazy that this is the way college athletics are going. It's crazy that, you find out about everything on Twitter. I think he might have said on a ticker on social media. I put in Twitter on there because obviously we find out about everything on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, you should be on there. Opting in, so on the scholarship limit, he said it'll be interesting to see how it plays out because some of our schools are opting in, which will have 63 scholarships spread out over 105, which is the Big Sky roster cap. The other are able to spread out that 63 over 85. So that's an interesting facet, something that he talked about. I'm kind of confused about what he means by the other will have the 63 that spread out over the 85. I get what he's saying with the schools that are opting in, but what does he mean 63 spread out over 85? Because can't schools who aren't opting in have, they don't have a roster cap. They have a scholarship cap. So, no. He's saying they have 63 scholarships. They have 83 scholarships to offer. I don't know. I'm confused. They can offer a total, I think, of 85 scholarships, but they're spread that over 63. They have a total of 63 scholarships to offer over a total of 85 players. I think that's what he's meaning. So that's why you see the partials in FCS football, and then the rest, I think, are walk-ons. So you have 63 scholarships to offer over 85 players, opposed to if you're opting in, you have 63 scholarships to spread over 105 players. Yes, that's where we're at. So if you're not opting in, you have 85 players that can get a total of 63 scholarships. The rest are going to be walk-ons. If you're opting in, you still have 63 scholarship cap, but you can offer it over 105 players. So we will see more partial scholarships, more people on halves, more people on books, more people on room and board. I mean, you won't see, you'll still see full scholarships, obviously, because some of your players have to be on full scholarship or they ain't going to be there. Not in terms of financial, but it's just like, it doesn't make sense. Why would I be here when this school is going to offer me a full-ride scholarship? So there's that. Okay, I was just a little confused for a second. One of the biggest things, obviously, that he talked about was the rule changes. The whole challenge we have going forward is to get everyone to play by the same rules, and he kind of touched on that with the scholarship limit. That's why they set the scholarship cap, because teams now have a roster cap. So a lot of teams have more than 105 players currently. A lot of them, I think, are sitting around the 110, 120 number, if I had to guess. And with that new scholarship cap, with that new roster cap, you can only have 105. You have to, if you're opting in, you can only have 105. If you do opt in, if you have that 105, you have to have that 105 number before, I believe it's the first week of the season, the first week of the academic year. I think it might be the first week of the season. I'll have to reread up on that. But that is a consideration to be had with a lot of these athletes, a lot of these schools in this house settlement. From the revenue sharing component, some of our schools are going to share revenue. Some of our schools are going to package their Alston money and cost of attendance money into revenue sharing. There's going to be third-party NIL still. I think in year one, it's going to be pretty chaotic because everyone is really finding their way. Each school is going to have to figure out how much money, if they want to rev share. How much money, if they want to rev share. So yeah, that's a really big consideration to be had. How much are you revenue sharing? What money is being revenue shared? But also, he mentioned the Alston money. So I've talked about the Alston Award. That is money that athletes get for academic considerations. So if you have a 3.0, you got a 3.5, you got a 4.0, you get this certain amount. Montana gives Alston Award money based on 3.0. I think they get 500. 3.0, I think they get 250. 3.5, I think they get 500. And a 4.0, I think they get 750. So total year, an athlete can make $1,500 through Alston money at Montana. The most a school can offer in an academic year, I think, is $5,600, $5,700 in Alston money. So people are looking at using that Alston money for rev share. People are thinking of using cost of attendance money for rev share. I want to talk to an athletic director in the Big Sky Conference and see, what is your rev share number? Like, what do you guys are going to be opting into the house settlement. You guys are going to be rev sharing. What money, like, give us an example of how much money an athlete can make in rev share, because we're going to, in a second in our next discussion, we're going to be looking at some of the contracts, and I'm going to get to that because I'm nearing an hour now. We're going to be looking at some of the contracts, what they could be structured like in the house settlement, and what all of that means within the landscape of college sports. I want to know what those contracts and what those numbers are going to look like at the FCS level. Does it look like, you're going to be making $15,000 this school year? You got a $5,000 signing bonus, or you get $5,000 at the beginning, or let's go 20. Let's go a flat number 20. You're going to be making $20,000 this year. You get $10,000 at the start of the year. If you make it through the full academic year, you get the other $10,000. There could be some $5,000 to $2,500 incentives in there and stuff like that. But I think that's kind of probably where the incentives will lie for FCS football. But we'll have to see. So you guys let me know what you guys think about Tom Wistrcill, some of his comments he made. If you guys want to, if you guys want to watch the full discussion, you guys can find that on the Skyline Sports YouTube Twitter account. You guys can find that on the ESPN Missoula Twitter account as well. Those conversations are going to be in the ESPN Roundtable, so please go listen to those full discussions. It was a great discussion with Colton Nuanez and Tom Wistrcill. Next, I want to talk about these buyouts in college football, so you guys stay tuned, and we'll get into that next. Okay, buyouts in college football. This is a big thing going on in college sports. Obviously, the house settlement has just been approved by the NCAA, not by the NCAA, by Judge Claudia Wilkin, and I want to give some of my thoughts about the house settlement. This is an excerpt I took out. This is a piece I took out of the Q&A that they posted just this past week, answering some of the questions that fans may have about the house settlement, answering questions that they may have about some of the things that they want to do within the house settlement. For example, we get to see what these agreements will look like. Student athlete signs a 2-year agreement, signing incentive payment to be paid upon enrollment, $50,000. So that's upon enrollment. Say a player transfers to a school, or a kid enrolls as a freshman at a school, $50,000 upon enrollment. As soon as you enroll, you get $50,000. Year 1, you're making $100,000. Year 2, you're making $100,000. In year 1, $150,000 would count against the institution's benefits cap, and $100,000 would count against the institution's benefits cap in year 2. So basically, this is a 2-year, $250,000 in a rev share deal. $50,000 upon enrollment. That's basically your guaranteed money. That's basically your signing bonus. You make that $50,000 no matter what. As soon as you enroll, that $50,000 is yours. That gives you peace of mind. Now, the other $100,000, $200,000 that you're set to make gives us peace of mind, because you get piece of it at the beginning of the school year. If you make it through the entire academic year, you get the other piece. So mind you, it says entire academic year. You have to make it through the entire academic year right here. If the student athlete I can't highlight this, but basically, I can't highlight it. The entire academic year is only paid if the student athlete remains with institution A for the entire academic year. So basically, they put that in there because the transfer portal window closes after spring ball. So say you make it through the winter transfer portal window right after the football season. Then you make it through spring ball, but you transfer in the spring transfer portal window. You didn't like things that went on in spring ball. You are not going to get that other installment of your NIL money, and the other institution that you're transferring to is tasked with paying us back. So let's read this. Student athlete, so this is about transfers within the house settlement. Student athlete attends institution A, and student athlete's agreement with institution A includes a $100,000 annual payment, under which $50,000 is paid at the beginning of the academic year, and the remaining $50,000 is paid only if the student athlete remains at institution A for the entire academic year, and a $100,000 buyout if the student athlete transfers from institution A. So basically, we pay you $50,000. You transfer in the spring transfer portal window. Whatever institution you transfer to has to pay us in a $100,000 buyout. Now, I think the buyouts will. I don't know if it's just a blanket $100,000 buyout for anybody that transfers, or if the buyout is commensurate to what we are paying them. So say we're paying them $500,000 in the year. That buyout has to look similar to the $500,000 we're paying him. So we would have paid him $250,000 at the beginning of the year. That buyout also does because they've only paid him $50,000 right now, but they're still paying $100,000 to get that player. So is it worth the extra $50,000 that you're going to be paying a school to get a player that institution didn't pay that player this school year? I don't know. Student athlete transferred to institution B after the first $50,000 payment is made, but prior to the second $50,000 payment. Unpaid $50,000 installment payment is removed from the cap from institution A because it was never owed or paid. Institution B pays the buyout to institution A on behalf of the student athlete. I'm still kind of confused. The 100,000 buyout must count against the institution B's benefit cap allowance in the year in which it was paid to the institution A. Institution A may not increase its benefit cap allowance 100,000 as a result of the buyout payment. So basically, we buy a player out to transfer to get him to transfer to our school. That counts towards our cap. The school that received the 100,000 buyout does not get 100,000 added to their benefits cap because they received that buyout. Their cap stays the same. You guys simply just receive that money because you lost a player. That is how that's going to be levied. I think this is some good answers given to people, particularly myself, looking into this settlement and looking to see how it's going to change things in college football and college sports. Now, my question is, how do those buyouts, how do those get, because how do those buyouts get paid to FCS schools? How do those buyouts get, how do they relate to FCS schools? How are schools going to be, structuring their buyouts? What does that look like? I don't know. I got a lot of questions still. Unachieved incentive. Student athlete signs a 2-year agreement as follows. January 1 of year 1, 50,000. January 1 of year 2, 50,000. $5,000 payment on February 1 of each year if student athlete maintains a 3.0 cumulative GPA after the fall semester. So basically, before any payments are made, all possible payments, including the $5,000 incentive payment, will count against the institution's benefit caps allowance in this year. In the years they may be paid. If the 5,000 payments are not made to student athlete before the end of each academic year, the payment will be removed from the benefits cap allowance for that year. So basically, if I don't hit that incentive, that cap will be that will be removed from our benefits cap before the end of the year. Do payments identified or facilitated by an entity owned, operated, or controlled by an institution, e.g., multimedia rights holder, and paid for by a third party, count against the involved institution's benefits cap? No. Such third-party payments, if equal or greater than $600, must be closed to NIL Go. So basically, there's a lot of answers given right there. And this is why I mentioned last week that NIL and collectives are still in the party, because their benefits and money being paid to athletes that are going to be subject to the NIL Go, Deloitte, third-party NIL. What am I trying to say? The NIL system, the NIL policing system, the NIL governance system, those aren't subject to the benefits cap. So basically, you can pay as much NIL as you want. Here's what you have to rev share. NIL collectives, you guys come in and save the party. So basically, NIL rev share, the rev share money is coming from the institution, it's coming from the college. It's coming from some line item, some revenue number within the athletic department's budget, within the university's budget. NIL is coming from a third party. NIL is coming from the collective. NIL is coming from donor money. It's coming from money outside of the institution. That is a different aspect, and that is more money we can pay to our athletes. So I think we'll see a lot of schools being able to leverage. You'll get $500,000 at the P4 level, at least. You'll get $500,000 from the collective. You'll get maybe $300,000 in rev share. So that gives you $800,000 year over year. As long as you stay at the institution, you're going to be making all of this money. I mean, that is what we are seeing. That is the landscape we're in. And, this gives us some answers. This gives us some things that we can mull over and talk about. Obviously, the Q&A, I think, was really good for them to release. I'm really happy that they dropped that Q&A to give people some answers that they're looking for, to answer some of the questions that people had. Here's some notes that I put down after reading some of the Q&A. Athletes only get paid full rev share if they stay the entire year. I think that is amazing. I think that is awesome. Obviously people are looking at how to stop players from transferring as much as possible. And this is something, money. These players want money. They're leaving to get money. If you only get half of your money for staying, if you only get your full amount of the money that you're set to make, if you stay the full academic year, which means you cannot transfer. Both transfer portal windows would have closed. You must stay at this institution to make all of your money. We will see, but I think also we could see some litigation being levied down on some people wanting to leave their schools for certain reasons and saying they disagree with the transfer number, they disagree with not being able to make their money. I'm sure we'll see something like that down the line. I can't doubt that. This means athletes will essentially be getting signing bonus or guaranteed money. Yeah, basically, you get half of your money at the beginning of the year. That is your peace of mind. That is your signing bonus. That is your guaranteed dollars. The rest of your money is not guaranteed. That is incentive based. The incentive, you stay for the academic year. You stay for the academic year, you get the other part of your money. But it's basically, right now, here's your signing bonus. You get $50,000 at the beginning of the year. You sign on that dotted line. As soon as you were enrolled, that money is going to hit your account. That money is going to hit your account right as the football season starts, whenever the school year starts, whenever. That money is going to be there. Rest assured that money is going to be there. The incentive is you don't get the rest of that money unless you stay for the full academic year. So I could see this being structured in a certain way to where like players are only gonna be getting a certain amount of their money through rev share. Like say you have a player who's transferred 4 times. I mean, I don't know, but I like it. Buyouts count towards the school buying the athlete out's rev share number of that year. We already talked about that. How will these buyouts get? How high will these buyouts get? And what will teams be willing to pay to get a player? So I think they're just using the $100,000 and $50,000 numbers in that Q&A as a metric for people to look at. But I want to know, how high will these buyouts get? So say, for example, you got a really 5-star quarterback. Say the Bryce Underwood at Michigan. He signs for $10 million. I think that's what he signed for. He signed for a crazy number to go to Michigan. He signs for a big number. He's got a big signing bonus number, a lot of money that he's getting as soon as he's enrolled at Michigan. He gets that. But then how high is his buyout? You have to pay us $500,000. You have to pay us $1 million. You have to pay us $5 million to buy Bryce Underwood out of his contract. I would love to know how that's going to be structured. Is the buyout a blanket buyout, or is buyouts whatever we want to set the buyout to? I'm interested in that. So we'll see. GPA incentives, similar to coaching contracts. So, we saw that in there. A player has to get 3.0 at the end of the 2024 academic year. At the end of the football season, if they've hit their GPA incentive, they get that number. They get a certain amount of. What are some other incentives we could see? Performance incentives, roster incentives. Are those legal? Are certain incentives legal in the rev share number? I think, it seems kind of that, any incentives can be legal, but, rev share, performance incentives, roster incentives, maybe a community engagement incentive. Hey, you got to do this number of community events in order to get a certain amount of rev share incentive. I don't know, snap count incentive. You have to play, maybe you got somebody who transferred to your school who's dealt with injuries. They have a lot of potential to be really, really good. You're going to pay them a large amount of money, but you could put a lot of it as incentive based. So you're going to get this base, this is going to be your guaranteed money, but you don't get the rest of this money until you hit said number of snap counts. You have to play 70% of the snaps this year. You have to play 65% of the snaps this year. We'll see how that's structured. But I think this is really good information being given, and I'm really excited to see how it goes. So you guys let me know what you guys think about that down below, and I will move on. Okay, I'm going to put these two topics together. We already kind of talked about it in the lead up. South Dakota announces that they will be opting into the House settlement. South Dakota's AD, John Schemmel, tweeted last week, fans, SD Coyote fans, this morning I informed the NCAA of our intent to opt into the House settlement for the 2025-2026 season. Huge thanks to USD presidents and SD regions for their help throughout this process. This is the best path forward for all of our SAs now and in the future. Much more info, Q&A sessions, comms, etc. coming next week and beyond. Have a great Father's Day weekend. Go Yotes. Exciting news for USD. South Dakota State has not announced that they will be opting in. North Dakota State, I believe, has announced that they will be opting in, if I'm not mistaken. I know I talked about this last week. Let me see the list. North Dakota State has not announced thus far that they are opting in. The only schools within the Missouri Valley are Southern Illinois, Youngstown State, and now South Dakota will be opting in. North Dakota State has not announced. South Dakota State has not announced. So that's interesting. The two top teams in the conference have not announced that they're going to be opting in. Some of the other schools in the conference have announced that they're opting in. I'm interested to see some of those Q&A sessions and comms that they release, that South Dakota releases, to see what they have to say as to why they opted in, what that's going to look like, all of that good stuff. So good there. We already talked about it. The FCS Oversight Committee is meeting tomorrow on Monday from 2 to 2:30 Eastern Time and is expected to decide on Sac State's FBS independent waiver. I'm interested to see if that gets approved. I would have thought that it would have already been approved. I don't know why it takes so long. But if the FBS OC approves the waiver, it then goes to the Division I Council for final approval, which meets later this month. So the FBS Oversight Committee is going to vote on it. Then it's going to go to the Division I Council for approval. So we'll see all of that. Those are my last two topics of the day. So let me know what you guys think about South Dakota opting in. Let me know what you guys think about Sac State's waiver. There's not much to be said about that, but you guys let me know what you guys think about that, and I will move on. Okay, I want to thank you guys for tapping into yet another Akem'S analysis. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning into the channel. I know we talked a lot about returning starters in the Big Sky Conference. We talked a lot about the roundtable with Tom Wistrcill and Coulter Nuanez. We also talked a lot about my biggest question marks of the 2025 season. Buyouts in college football, some of the language going on in the House settlement, a lot going on in college football right now. So you guys let me know what you guys think about all of this down below. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Please make sure you guys hit the like. Please make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Please make sure you guys leave me a comment down below. We just hit 1,800 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for supporting. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the channel. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and get me to 2,000 subscribers. Would love to hit 2,000 during the beginning of this football season and continue to grow. I thank you guys for supporting me so much. I appreciate dropping videos for you guys each week. Looking to do some more breakdowns. If you guys have thought that I have been a little away from the channel, there's been a lot going on with my wedding and things leading up to me getting married. So there's a lot going on in the Akem household right now. We got a lot happening. I just had my batch. I just was traveling. I'm doing some more travel these next coming weeks. So I have been trying to get to the breakdowns, but there's just a lot going on. So please hang in there with me. The season is coming very, very fast, and we will be hitting the ground running during the football season. So I want to thank you guys for stepping into the channel. Appreciate you guys. Let me know if there's anything you guys want me to cover next week on my video. I will get into that for you guys, but thank you guys so much for supporting. Leave me a like, comment, subscribe. I will say it every time. Please subscribe, like. It helps the algorithm. And please comment down below. I love hearing what you guys have to say. I will catch you guys next time. See you later.